Today we're going to do Shin Chat Beis Halachah Daled and Hey, but instead of reading it to you, they're really, really long din, and most people find it somewhat complicated. So I'm going to, instead of reading it, I'm going to tell you what's going on. You can feel free to read it afterwards. Okay. Before I tell you what the din is, I have to say some pieces of information that you probably know, but it's just an introduction to what we're going to say, and that is the Torah calls Challah Truma. Okay, Challah Terima Truma, and from there we learn out that the Challah has the status of Truma for many, many dinim. What's going to get to us is that the only people who can eat it are Kehanim, and the Kohen and the Challah have to both be Tahar in order to eat it. Okay, if it's Tameh, like as nowadays when we assume that Challah is Tameh, then you're not allowed to eat it. The person is Tameh, the Challah is Tameh nowadays, so you're not allowed to eat them. And just like with regular Truma, Challah that's Tameh, you mechuyev to burn it. We're not going to talk about that part of it today, specifically about the burning, but when you burn it, the kohen is allowed to have hanaf from it while you're burning. Okay, and just as an aside, I think we're going to talk about this at a different time. In order to say that the challah is tameh, it had to have been hochshel l'kavatoma, it had to have once become wet, which our standard flour is. Okay, rye and spelt flour are not, but standard flour has gotten hochshel l'kavatoma. It's been wet, as it's called tempered, as part of the process. It gets tempered, it gets wet.
The wheat has been with the flour.
The wheat, at some point, it had to have become wet, which it did. Okay. So we said last time that the din is at midaraisa. You can give even the tiniest amount as a Hafrashas challah that's good enough. Midarabanan is a shear. Okay, the shear is either a 24th or a 48th, depending on your situation. So the Mishnah says, the Mishnah Challah says that there are shalosh arutzos l'challah. There's 3 different areas. And each one of them has their own different din of how you should be mafresh challah in those 3 places. Okay, the main part of Eretz Yisrael, which we call the place where the oily Bavel captured, I mean, even in the second base English they occupied that area. People know how to be careful about Tumah V'Tara, and therefore you do regular Hafrashah like you would imagine. You take a 24th or 48th, you give it to the Kohen, and the Kohen eats it. That's it. The way the Mishnah says it, you give 1 challah. Like you would expect. You take your piece off, give it to the Kohen, and the Kohen eats it. In the outskirts of Eretz Yisrael, which is the lands that were only captured during the time of the first Beis English, we call the lands of Oil Mitzrayim. There, the people live so close to Chutz La'aretz, so not part of Eretz Yisrael, that they don't know how to be makbid on Tumah V'Tara, and therefore you assume that the person and the challah are tamei. And so what you do is, when you're mafresh challah, you take off the shear, the 48th that you're supposed to. Since it's tamei, you take only a 48th. You take off the 48th and you burn it, because since it's tamei, you have to burn it. Then, as a zeicher for the fact that you're supposed to eat challah, you're not supposed to burn challah, you're supposed to eat it, chacham or masakin, you should take off a second challah, okay? And for that, you take off just a mashu, you give it to a kohen, and the kohen eats it. Okay? That second one that you give to the kohen, any kohen can eat it. It has to be a kohen, but he could be talmid, it makes no difference. That second piece you give to a kohen as a remembrance that challah is supposed to be eaten. As remembrance.
It's not really challah.
It's not really challah, right? The real challah was the first one, which you took, and now it's challah, which is tamei, so you burn it. And that one you give the shear. The second one you give just the mashahu, you give it to a kohen, and the kohen eats it.
Okay, but the second piece also comes from the meat.
From the batter, yeah, you take it from the batter, and you give it to a kohen. Okay. Now, then the Mishnah says, in the lands that are outside of Eretz Yisrael, then you also marfish 2 challahs. You do the same thing, you give 2 challahs. But over here, since we're talking about challah chutz la'aretz, since challah and chutz la'aretz is only a drabanan altogether, so therefore the Chacham said, let's not make it so. Let's not be marbeh bin nisrafim. Why should we make it like an Eretz Yisrael and be marbeh bin nisrafim? So what we do is we say in the third area, which is in chutz la'aretz, the first challah, the real challah, is just the mashahu. And that's the one that gets burned. The Rishon is nisrefes, it's a small one, because why bother overdoing it with the burning? And then the second one, which is the shear, which is the 48th, that you give to a kohen, and the kohen eats it. And again, the same thing, any kohen can eat it, even if he's tummy, makes no difference. Okay, doesn't matter how tummy he is, he can eat it. Okay, so the Mishnah says there's 3 different places, in the main place, in the heartland of Eretz Yisrael, you give just 1 challah like you're supposed to. In the edges of Eretz Yisrael, the outskirts, and out of Eretz Yisrael, you give 2 challahs, and just a difference of which one is the burnt one, which one is the one you give to the kohen to eat. Okay, so that's what the Mishnah says, and everything is hunky-dory in the Mishnah. Okay, the problem is that the Gemara in Bechira says that when you're mafresh challah and chutz la'aretz, if you're being mafresh challah and chutz la'aretz, you should do is take 1 challah, not 2, take 1 challah, and give it to a kohen katan, Okay, we'll talk more about the kohen katan a little later. The point is, the kohen katan only has certain tumah, but not other tumah. Okay, he was never balkari or a katana who was never neither. So you give it to a kohen katan. We'll talk more about that in a second, and that's it. And they eat it. Okay, you give it to them and they eat it. So what happened to the Mishnah that says that there's two challahs? In Chutzor, you're supposed to give two challahs. Here, the Gemara says you can get away with one. The Gemara says if there's no kohen katan, then you give two challahs. Well, I said, where did this option come from that you should give one? The Mishnah says you have to give two challahs. Okay, that's the question. And there's two basic answers in the Rishonim to that question. Two basic ways to approach it. Okay?
And that's all Lagabe Chutzlar, so that's also Lagabe, this Gemara B'cher is also Lagabe, the outskirts of Eretz Yisrael.
Chutzar.
What's the nafkamina?
In the Chutzar, challahs only drop on.
I know,
so the rules are less.
The outskirts is because of Tumah.
Right. In the edges of Eretz Yisrael, challah is
Really
potentially
good.
the raisa when everybody who lived there, so therefore we treat it, so to speak, like a raisa. This is for Chutzar. So the Rosh says, one explanation is the Rosh says is that the Mishnah is, when I said to you that the Mishnah has this area number 3, this third area that's outside of Eretz Yisrael, it didn't mean all of Chutz Aretz. It only meant the land that's just outside of Eretz Yisrael, right around the areas immediately surrounding Eretz Yisrael, which for lots of halachas atluis b'aretz has special statuses. In that place, you have to make two challahs. But when you go to real chutz, like far away, like Bavna, like really far away, in Chicago, far away, in that place you have this option to give one challah, and you give it to the kohen katan. If you don't have a kohen katan, then fine, then you're stuck, and you give two challahs, but you have this option of giving one challah, and a kohen katan can eat it. Okay, that's how the Rosh learns. Obviously, there's an obvious daichik to what he's saying. It's obvious what the problem is that the Mishnah said, Shalosh Ratzas Achala. The Mishnah told us that there are 3 places where you could be mafresh, 3 different areas, and each one has its way to be mafresh challah, and it comes along the Gemara B'chayris, like sort of, without even mentioning that the Mishnah said not like that, it says, Tata, there's a 4th place. Okay, the way the Rosh is learning, there's an obvious difficulty in reading the Gemara. The Gemara is creating a 4th one. It doesn't say, those are 3, but here's a 4th one. Just makes a statement as if nothing's doing.
Why did the Mishnah say that in the second and third case, be mafresh challah and give it to a copy?
So that's the Rosh is coming to answer. That's our question. The Rosh says, because they were talking about right near Eretz Yisrael, where you don't have the option of giving to a kohen katan. But if you're really far from Eretz Yisrael,
why don't you have the option? They can eat the tumah or whatever.
Because that kula doesn't apply around right near Eretz Yisrael. It's only for far away. That option is only for far away.
Okay.
That option only for
Tumas, right.
the ikar challah has to be eaten by someone who's really allowed to, so you have to burn it. So again, what's missing leaves you wondering, why did the Mishnah say it? If not the Mishnah say it, at least the Gemara, when it says it, should have made a point of saying you should know. That's what the Mishnah said, and we have a 4th place. Okay, that's what the Rosh learns. Okay, the Rambam says no. He says the Gemara and the Mishnah are all talking about all of Chutz Aretz. The third area in the Mishnah is, as you would have assumed, it means all of Chutz Aretz, and just like the Gemara, the Mishnah didn't bother to tell you this extra kula. Really, the din is in all of Chutz Aretz you have to be mafresh 2 challahs, a small one that gets burned, a big one that gets eaten. But the Gemara is telling you should know the Mishnah forgot to tell you there's a loophole, there's an option if you want to. Instead of if you want to give you a little piece that gets burned and a big piece that gets eaten by certain kohanim, you could take eaten by any kohen, you could take one big piece and give it to a kohen katan and do that. So the Gemara is telling you a new option that the Mishnah didn't bother to tell you, but it's not arguing on the Mishnah. It's just telling you something that the Mishnah would have agreed to that also. Okay, that's what the Rambam learns. And the Shulchan Aruch, if you would have read it, you would see passing like the Rambam. Okay, passing like the Rambam, that the din is in Chutz Aretz you have these options. In all of Chutz Aretz you have these 2 options. Either you give a small one gets burned, and then a big piece goes to any kohen who wants to. Any kohen who wants to could eat it, even if he's tamei, makes no difference. Or you take a big piece and give it to a kohen katan, and the kohen katan can eat it as such. Okay. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. I'm not finished. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Okay. Now,
The small piece that you burn, you give it to a kohen to burn?
no, you burn it yourself. No, I don't know why it doesn't say that. Why don't you give it to the kohen and you're allowed to have hanah from it? So why the little piece you don't give to the kohen, maybe it's not such a question, because how much hanah could you get from it?
Yeah,
but in the big piece, it's more of a question in the area on the outskirts of Eretz Yisrael, where the piece that you burn is a more significant piece. Why doesn't it say that you should give to? I don't know why. I don't know what the reason is. Okay, now that's all nice and good. Well, when I say to you nice and good, it's what the Shulchan Aruch says. But the Beis Yosef brings that many Rishonim ask a question, and they ask is, okay, the din is like the Rambam, that in Chutz Aretz you're supposed to either give 2 challahs or give one to a kohen katan, a big one to a kohen katan. He says, you haven't seen anybody do that? You didn't even see anybody doing that? He says, we don't do that. All kinds of Rishonim quote, in our place they don't, come on, everyone says in our places nobody does that. Everyone takes a piece and they burn it. No one takes a little piece to burn and they give a big piece to a kohen, or give a piece to a kohen cutting. No one ever saw it.
No mucus.
What? So,
no mucus.
So what happened? They're like, hello. What? They said,
I got too many calls.
That's right. So everybody, people, all the Rishonim guess, many Rishonim guesses with like what happened to this din that is what? Okay, so the Ramah brings.
Would you like me to make you one?
The Ramah brings the most common answer that's given for this thing. Why the minute is that we don't do what is a Beferish and Mishnah in tomorrow. And he says like this. I'm putting some words to explain it in the middle of what the Ramah says. And that is like this. We think that the reason why we do a Zecher for giving challah to a kohen to eat is, as I said to you, the reason is because we want to remember that challah is supposed to be eaten. Challah is eaten. So we think of it that it's like eating kairach. Okay? At the Seder we eat kairach, which is Zecher L'Mikdash Shil. In the base of Mikdash, Hillel used to do like this. Very nice. So we want to remember what Hillel used to do, so we do that. We want to remember that they used to take an arava for 4 days, the lulav for 4 days, for 7 days. So we take the lulav all 7 days. We think it's like a Zecher to what used to be. That's not true. That's not what this kind of a Zecher is. What this Zecher is that if I'm living in Chutz La'aretz, and I will always burn my challah, then, or I'm living on the outskirts of Eretz Yisrael where it's tummy, and I'm always going to burn my challah, if I ever go to visit Eretz Yisrael, or I even move to Eretz Yisrael, I'm going to say, by ends, we don't eat the challah. I'm going to come up, I'm going to say, no, my whole life I never ate challah. So we want to make sure that if you ever go to Eretz Yisrael, you should know that challah is supposed to be eaten. So when you come to Eretz Yisrael and you see people eat, you make a batter, you're going to give it to a kohen, then things will be tar, you give it to a kohen, he's going to eat it. So it's not a zecher as in, in the olden days we used to do like this. It's a zecher as in, it should be on your mind so that when you go to Eretz Yisrael, you'll know how to do the mitzvah correctly. And therefore, let me finish by saying, hold on a second. And therefore, nowadays, that even in Eretz Yisrael, they're not makbid on Tumah v'Tahara. Nowadays, there's no Efer Parah, and no one's makbid on Tumah v'Tahara at all, there's no such thing. And so even in Eretz Yisrael, nobody eats it. Therefore, even us people living in Chutz La'aretz have no need to be mafresh a piece and give it to a kohen to eat, because we're never in our lives going to have a situation when the kohen is going to have to eat it, even if we go to Eretz Yisrael and the kohen is not going to eat it anyhow. So therefore, we in Chutz La'aretz have no need, or even the people on the edges of Eretz Yisrael have no need to be mafresh a piece to eat. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. In the as we see it today, we don't see that we're going to have to do it. So some mitzvahs are made in case you bought Meheri, you bought the base. I mean, we're going to keep a second day of this coming week just for that reason. But it's not like that. The whole mitzvah was made because I will go to Eretz Yisrael and do the mitzvah. Today, if I went to Eretz Yisrael, I wouldn't have to give it someone to eat it, and therefore the whole zecher, that whole point of a zecher, is out the window. Now, I have to tell you something. Of course.
Find this for why are we not then on Trumas and Meisters too in Chutz La'aretz? So when we go to Eretz Yisrael, we'll realize that when we take...
So some things are making Chutz La'aretz, in the edges, right around Eretz Yisrael. Chazal didn't impose that upon us to make them. So they did say we should do it in Chutz La'aretz, and people talk about that. Why is Chal different than Truma? Okay, but they didn't...
You don't do it all in Chutz La'aretz.
Okay, that's how we do it in Chutz La'aretz. You're going to go to Eretz Yisrael, you can do it the same way you do it. So what's going on here is, what's going on over here is that you realize that what I just said to you, that doesn't say it in the Gemara. What happened is, in the Gemara it says you should do it. In the times of the Gemara, they were still not going to Tumah v'Tahara, at least in Eretz Yisrael. So what happened is, at some point, when people stopped being makbid on Tumah v'Tahara, the people understood on their own, or their Chachamim told them that now you no longer have to do what it says beferish in the Mishnah, that you have to have the zecher for people eating it. Okay, and therefore the Ramah says that's the most common explanation for why. Why? Now, the Ramah. I mean, a bunch of Rishonim say, I'll read you the words of the Ramah. V'yesh ayim kiven she'ein chala nechelas b'zman hazeh be'eretz Yisrael, gam b'sharma koymes ein tzrichen lahafresh rak chala achas ulsarfa. Okay? And the hesper is that it's not a zecher as in I have to remember what happened in the olden days. It's that today I'm going to go to Eretz Yisrael and do it, and that not again anymore. I won't have to do it anymore, and therefore I'm allowed to do that. And therefore the Ramah says that's the meaning that we only we mafresh a piece and we burn it, and there's no part that have to be given to Kahanan to eat. Okay, other reasons will come in a minute. Okay, we'll talk about the other reasons sort of later. Okay, the Beis Yosef mentions this. It's not like, the Rambam made this up. The Beis Yosef brings all this. He's obviously not very happy with it. As some of the Rishonim are like a little surprised that Mamash Beferisha didn't just got tossed out the window. And therefore he says, he doesn't say this. The Beis Yosef says, give 2 challahs, give 2 kohen katan like that. Rabbi Raka has been out of town, and I've been trying to find out if Sfardim actually do that. Yeah, well, I wasn't. I was, I'm sorry, we didn't cross paths. We've been trying to talk to each other, so I haven't gotten yet whether the Sfardim actually do that. The Shulchan says it straight out like the din is, like you're supposed to do without this movement to give a small amount. I don't know if the Sfardim
So what, they do both?
It says in Shulchan like what it says in the Mishnah, it says in the Gemara. He's supposed to give a small piece to burn and a big piece to a kohen that any kohen can eat it, even if he's tummy, or give a big piece to a kohen who's a katan, who is not tummy, or a gadol who's tar. Okay, now.
Were they allowed to eat an Ashkenazi challah, or is there an issue?
No. Once you mafresh even in the mound, it's not tevel anymore. You're allowed to eat it. You may have a separate mitzvah to do this part. That's not a problem. Okay, now.
That's the next chumrah the series is going to take out.
Yeah. Okay, now.
So eventually Yisrael be Sfardim, a person's Challah be Sfardim.
Okay, now, I had mentioned a few times in passing that on the outskirts of Eretz Yisrael, the kohen is allowed to eat the second challah. Okay, the first piece that you're mafresh, which is in the outskirts of Eretz Yisrael, you're mafresh a big piece. That or out of Eretz Yisrael, a small piece. That piece that you're mafresh is the real challah, and then the so to speak the fake challah, the second one that you give to the kohen to eat, has no kedusha to it. So he can eat it in his tummy. Only a kohen can eat it, but any kohen can eat it. It doesn't make a difference how tummy he is. It makes no difference. When we get to chutzart.
It's a gindra. It's temple.
It's fake.
Only a kohen in it.
It's fake.
If I gave it to
Because the Chacham are trying to make you remember that Kohanim eat challah.
Okay.
So if everyone can eat it, we miss the boat. You miss the point. The point is supposed to remind people that challah is eaten, so we have to give it to a kohen. If they didn't put all the other chumras to it that you only bring your time, they just have a kohen has it. Okay, now.
You gotta take off the small piece first.
Yes.
Otherwise it's gonna make the juice.
Yes, you take off the burnt piece goes first. Yes, you have to wrap that piece first, or else you're up the creek. Okay. Okay, so now, the Gemara says that chal's chutz la'aretz has an even more lenient status. And that is, the first one again is the real challah, it gets burnt. No one can touch that. No one can eat that. Okay. But the second one is, the second challah would be eaten by any kohen. But you have this option, as I've mentioned to you, to just be mafresh one time. And that you give to a kohen katan. What does that mean? The Gemara explains that they decided that if challah chutz la'aretz is not really chayv mitaraisa, in chutz la'aretz only chayv mitarabbanan, so they made a kula like this. Usually challah can only be eaten by a kohen who's tahar, and the challah is tahar. They said the challah doesn't make a difference if the challah can be tummy also, it makes no difference. And even the kohen, he doesn't have to be so tahar, so to speak. He has to, as long as he's not a tumah hayotzim gufoy, he didn't become tummy based on something that came from him, rather he came from the outside, that's good enough. What does that mean, tumah hayotzim gufoy? So the 4 examples that we have is a zav, zava, nida, and yuledes. Okay, those are 4 people who are tummy because something came out of their body. Okay, then that person, they sort of like inherently tummy. What?
Okay.
That's part of Zav. Okay, that's wrapped into Zav. That's wrapped into Zav. And Matzah. The Rambam says Matzah also. But Shulchan doesn't mean nowadays we don't have a Matzah. But anyhow, Rabbi Shachar just actually gave a shir about that. Well, we don't have Matzah nowadays. Okay, so, but the Rambam took some Matzah also. But, and actually the Gemara says, Tumah Yotzim Gufa. I don't know why, I don't know how we know that a Matzah is Yotzim Gufa. It's a Tumah inherent. So, he's going Gemara different. Hey, go ahead. Anyhow, so there's a special kula. So therefore, if you have a katan, who's less than 9 years old, so we assume that he was never a zav or a bakeri. If we have a girl who's less than 12, so she assumed to have never been eaten, unless we know, of course, in either of these cases, you're allowed to give them this challah and they can eat it. Now, also, it doesn't say this in the Gemara, but the Rishonim say the same thing is, if you have an adult who is toivel, a man or a lady who is toivel, then he can eat this also, okay? Talks about why doesn't the Gemara say that, but the thing is the same. The Mechaber says he could eat it right away. He doesn't even need Harav Shemesh. And the Ramah says, no, he should have Harav Shemesh. So it is according to the Mechaber, when you're mafresh chal, when you're mafresh this big piece, you could be mafresh it. The guy could dunk into the mikvah and come out and eat the piece. Okay? A man or a lady could dunk in the mikvah, come out and eat the piece. The Ramah says you should wait for Harav Shemesh. Okay. What I just said so far is pretty much agreed that's what is allowed. The question is like this. The Ramah said, I told you the Ramah says V'yesha. Remember that the din is nowadays we take a small piece and we burn it. Okay? And that's true. So we explained why the Ramah holds that's what you're allowed to do. What would the Ramah hold about the other option? Is Ramah telling you have a he's giving you a kula. He is giving you a kula. You, instead of being mafresh a 48th and giving it to a kohen to eat, you take a little piece, burn it, and you're finished. What would be if you wanted to give it to a kohen katan? Okay? Let's say the Oppenheimers. Okay? Their son is a kohen. So they want to be mafresh, they don't have his kohen katan anymore. Okay, they don't have a kohen. They're their grandson. Okay, so they want to be mafresh a piece and give it to the kohen katan. He should eat it. So are they allowed to do that? When the Ramah said that the minhag is we burn it, did he mean is that the only thing you're allowed to do? Or is he saying, nowadays you have the minhag that you're allowed to do this also, you can get away with that. But if you want to give it to a kohen katan, then go ahead. So the Aruch Shulchan has a deal that the Ramah holds you still have both choices because, now, I wasn't doing this to trick you, but I didn't read you the Ramah because I saved you. There's a lot of words over here. The Ramah, after he says this din that you can give away a small amount, he says you should know, and if you eat challah nowadays, this is the bracha that you should make. Really? Bracha? We do that bracha. You're not allowed to eat it. We just, if the only option is to burn it, and we don't hold of giving it to a kohen katan anymore, why does he tell you that if you want to eat it, this is the bracha that you should? He tells you the exact wording of the bracha that you're supposed to make. Why did he tell you that? Sounds like all he meant to do here was just to tell you that you have this option to take a tiny amount and burn it. But if you want to give it to a kohen katan to eat it, go for it. That's okay. That's okay. You can do it. And then when you do that, you should tell the kohen to make a bracha.
Why?
Okay. No, well, a gadol can eat it also. When I say kohen katan, remember, kohen katan now means is a kohen katan or a gadol who is toivel. So if I wanted to eat it, I could eat it. I could be mafresh challah, go be toivel and come out and eat it, or wait till tonight and then I could eat it. So I make a bracha. There's a bracha to be made. So that sounds like that the Ramah holds that he just gave you a kula, but if you want to do the ikar, then that's fine also. Asher kedeshanu b'kedusha shel Aaron v'tzivon lechot truma. Okay. Okay. So now, I'm not finished. Yes. When I'm finished, yes, you'll ask that question. So, what I just said, what the Aruch Shulchan is further brought out because the Ramah in Hilchos Pesach. We're going to talk about this Ramah in a minute, more in detail in Hilchos Pesach. The Ramah says, when you're mafresh challah, you should give it to a kohen katan. That's what you should do with it. He says, v'yesh amrim that you shouldn't. Yesh amrim that you shouldn't do. But the stum that he starts with is, you should give it to a kohen katan. That's what you should do with it. Okay? So, sure sounds like the Ramah holds that you're allowed to give it to a kohen katan, but you have this option of burning a small piece, and of course, most people would choose that. Because you have a choice. You should give a 48th to the kohen katan, or you should take a small piece and burn it. So most people would opt for taking the small piece and burning it. Okay. Now, even though I said that, even though that seems to be what the Ramah holds, what mine is, many of the Achronim say you shouldn't do it. Okay? There's the Taz on the page. It's not clear if the Taz thinks he's explaining the Ramah or arguing the Ramah says you shouldn't do it. The Shach is more clear that he thinks he's explaining the Ramah to be saying that you shouldn't do it. The Mishabur brings, when the Mishabur Tappan Zayin in Hilchos Pesach, when he talks about it, he says the din is you're allowed to do it, but Pim Gordon says you're not supposed to do it. Okay? So you shouldn't do it. And he said no one does it. You shouldn't do that. So, before I get back to what this Ramah is talking about in Hilchos Pesach, what on earth is it doing in Hilchos Pesach, I'm going to tell you, first I have to explain to you the reasons. What is the reason why, Lamaisa, you shouldn't be allowed to give it to the kohen katan? Again, I explained to you why the Ramah held you should just do one challah instead of two challahs. But what would be the reason for saying you shouldn't have the option of giving it to the kohen katan? What's wrong with that option? What's wrong with that? So there's two main reasons. There are a few reasons, but there's two main reasons. And the first one is like this. Nowadays, it's perfectly acceptable to take a mashu and burn it. That's perfectly, we explained it, that's perfectly acceptable. So, if you would give a piece to a kohen to eat, you're taking a chance. Because there's a chance that someone who's not a kohen is going to eat it. If I bake this roll, and I say, this is the challah, and kohen katan, you can go eat it, there's a chance that someone, by mistake, who's not a kohen will eat it. Or, that the kohen will, the way the place can say it, the kohen will dunk it into his soup, and all of a sudden there's going to be blias of truma in his bowl, and now someone else in the family, someone else is going to eat from that bowl, and is going to have a truma bli in it. So in order to avoid this problem, we say, don't use the option of giving it to a kohen katan, because that opens up the possibility that the wrong person is going to eat it, maybe a kohen will eat it, or someone who's not a kohen is going to eat it, and therefore just use the first option of just burning it. That's one reason. Second reason is that we're no longer sure that people are real kohanim. All kohanim are not miyuchas anymore, and therefore don't give it to the kohen, don't use that option because we're not sure the person is really kohen. Okay, now, what did you say? Jeffrey?
Speak
Okay.
for yourself.
Okay. So I didn't make this up. I'm not, and I'm a client, so I don't feel insulted. Okay. Now we have a diuk. There's a diuk that the Ramah, if the Ramah holds, you're not allowed to eat. You're not allowed to give it to a kohen katan, and he would hold it for the second reason. He would hold it. I'm sorry, for the first reason. For the first reason, which is because you might, so the wrong person might eat, and that is as follows. A few simanim from here is Hilchos Truma. Okay? Really, probably the longest siman in Shulchan Aruch is Hilchos Truma. Okay? It's almost word for word out of the Rambam. The Hafrashas, halachos of being a marfish Truma Semeshus. And the Ramah over there says that when you burn Truma Tmeya, a kohen is allowed to have hana from the Truma as it's burning. And he says, even if the kohen is not miyuchas, he's allowed to have hana from it. Which you all remember of the Hanan, right? When Hanan burnt the watermelon seeds from our company, when Mafra Trum Shemaisis, he roasted a hot dog in the fire of the watermelon seeds, because Ramah says a kohen is allowed to have Hana from it. So he roasted a hot dog in that fire as it was burning, as we were burning the Truma watermelon seeds. Okay, that's what he did. Like the Ramah says, you're allowed to do that. Okay, so why does the Ramah say that even if the kohen is not miyuchas? Because the din is that the rule that you need to have a kohen miyuchas only applies to Truma Deraisa. For Truma that's only Truma Derabanan, then even a kohen who's not miyuchas is considered to be a kohen. So since Truma nowadays is only Derabanan, so the Ramah says, so when you burn the Truma, even a kohen who's not miyuchas is allowed to have enough from it. Okay, well, that's what the Ramah says a few pages from here. So why would we say over here that the kohen, you can't give it to a kohen katan because he's not miyuchas? The Challah we're talking about, especially in Challah Chutzlard, is only a Challah with Derabanan. So therefore, if kohen miyuchas is not a problem for Challah Derabanan, it wouldn't be a problem over here. Which would tell me that the reason why the Ramah is saying over here, if you think the Ramah is saying that you can't eat Truma, you can't give it to a kohen katan, is because we're afraid the wrong person's going to eat it, the Zor is going to eat it. That's what the Ramah's reason is. Okay? What I said to you is, it's not a for sure raya. You can get around this raya that I had. There's other explanations that I'm over there, but let's go with that. Okay, so now let's turn to Hilchos Pesach. Why is the Ramah in Hilchos Pesach? The Ramah is in Hilchos Pesach for the following reason. If a person is baking matzah on the Yom Tov days of Pesach, he's baking matzah, so he's got a problem. And the problem is like this. When you're mafresh challah on Yom Tov, you're allowed to bake on Yom Tov. You're mafresh challah, you have a problem. You can't burn the piece that you were just mafresh because that's havara or bishul shelo l'tzarich. You're baking something on Yom Tov for no reason. There's no reason to bake it. No one's allowed to eat it anyhow. It's truma tmei. No one's going to eat it. So you can't burn it. Well, you can't leave it, like if it was sukkahs, you would just leave it around. You can't leave it around because it's going to become chametz. Okay, it's going to become chametz. So what are you going to do? You can't burn it. And you can't leave it around either. So we have a problem here. What are we supposed to do with this? What are we supposed to do with this piece of dough over here? So Shulchan Aruch says, what you should do is, you should do your Hafrashah incorrectly. You're supposed to do Hafrashah after you knead the flour and water together. In this case, don't do that. Bake it first, and after you bake it, then do the Hafrashah, so to speak, at the wrong time. Not when you're supposed to, but wait after the Hafrashah. This way you'll have been baked, better, and you won't do the Hafrashah later on. Okay? Just as an aside. Why doesn't the Shulchan Aruch say you should give it to a kohen katan? I told you the Shulchan Aruch says over here you can give it to a kohen katan. It says it right here in our din. The Shulchan Aruch for sure holds you can give it to a kohen katan. Why doesn't he say that? So you may not like this, but Baal the answer to that question is that the Mechaber came to Eretz Yisrael in 1535. Shulchan Aruch was finished in 1555. Okay, so it was written in Eretz Yisrael. So when the Shulchan Aruch was talking about a person baking challah, matzah, he's talking about a person in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, you can't give it to a kohen katan. Okay, that's not an option when you live in Eretz Yisrael to give it to a kohen katan, because in Eretz Yisrael, the only head to give it to a kohen katan is only for Chalas Chutzards. Chalas Eretz Yisrael, you can't give it to a kohen katan. Okay, so
You should have said that.
okay, maybe I don't know if that's the right answer. I said it's about the answer. Why the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say it, but the Ramah does say it. The Ramah says, he says, don't do this thing to be mafresh at the wrong time. Give it to a kohen katan. A kohen katan's allowed to eat it, so be mafresh like you're supposed to, and then go ahead and bake it, and find your neighbor who's a 6-year-old kohen and give it to him to eat it. That's or give it to an adult. Let the adult be terrible. He can go eat it. That's what Ramah says. The Yeshayim that you shouldn't do that. As I said to you, the Yeshayim that you're not allowed to give challah to you're not allowed to give challah to a kohen katan. So the Magen Avraham over there brings Aruch, who asks. He says, I don't understand. Why did the Ramah say you should give it to a kohen katan? Why does he start off with the assumption you give it to a kohen katan? Don't we know over here that you're not allowed to give it to a kohen katan? As I said to you, the Shach read it into this Ramah. Don't we say over here that you're not allowed to give it to a kohen katan? So maybe the Shulchan Aruch could have said that. And I said, why he didn't? But the Shulchan Aruch maybe could have said that, but the Ramah holds you can't give it to a Kohen Katan. So why, using Hilchos Pesach, does he say, you should give it, why is that his assumption that you should give it to the Kohen Katan? Okay, so the Magen Avraham has a really deep reason. Okay, I'm not going to tell you. A really deep reason is based on a Gemara in Chulun. Okay, but you could say, I think you could say a different answer. Okay, explanation for why the Ramah says it. I said to you a minute ago that the Ramah, if he holds that you're not allowed to give it to a Kohen Katan, it's not because we need Kohanim Miyuchasim. That's not his reason. He doesn't hold for that reason. The reason is because maybe if you give it to the Kohen, someone who's not a Kohen is going to end up eating it. So what that means is like this. If you're standing on a regular Tuesday and you're mafresh challah, you have a choice. Should I burn a little piece or should I give it to a Kohen Katan? So we say, of course, burn the little piece. Because if you're going to give it to the Kohen Katan, you're opening yourself up to a possibility that a Zor may end up eating it. Okay, so it's worth it. Burn the little piece instead of give it to the Kohen Katan. That's all fine and dandy on a regular Tuesday. But comes Yom Tov Pesach, when I'm stuck, I don't have any other choices of how am I supposed to do this. I have to be mafresh challah correctly when I need the dough. That's what I'm supposed to be mafresh challah. Well, if I do that, I'm going to be stuck. It'll become chomet, so I won't be able to burn it. So then, the idea that says, don't give it to a Kohen because maybe your Zohar will eat it, that's very nice if you have choices. But today I don't have a choice. Today I'm stuck that I have to be mafresh challah, and I have no choice to just burn it. So then we do what the Ikar din is. The din is, give it to a Kohen Katan and you'll be careful. So if you have no reason not to do it, you might as well give it. You might as well burn it. But when you do have an option, so if the whole reason to not usually give it to a Kohen Katan is because we're afraid he's going to give it to a Zor. Okay, so fine. So therefore, when you come to Pesach, it's nothing to do with Pesach per se. It's when you come to Yom Tov Pesach that then there's no reason. There's a special reason why you should give it to the Kohen Katan. So the other chashash may be a Zor will eat it. You don't have to worry about it. In which case, the V'yesh Armim of the Ramah is V'yesh Armim that you never give it to a Kohen Katan. That is going, which is what the Magen Avraham says. That's going because he's not a miyuchas. If the problem is because the Kohen nowadays are not miyuchas, and you hold that's a problem even with Chal Drabanan, to give it to a Kohen who's not miyuchas, then Yesh Armim you never get to them. Okay, if I never get to them, I never get to them, so then I have to find another option. The Ramah has other options of what you're supposed to do.